I'd like to talk about just first off, just a minute or two about a concept about refrigerants. So one of the things that we talk about as refrigerants, that's the business we're in. We're in the refrigerant moving, refrigerant recovery business. So one of the things we have to think about is, so when we have refrigerant in a vessel, what's really inside that vessel? So one of the things I'd like to kind of make an analogy is let's imagine that this cylinder here is a half-ton cylinder with 134 refrigerant in it. And I'm going to say for the example that there might be 400 pounds of weight, refrigerant weight in that cylinder. One of the things is, and again, it all depends on your knowledge about refrigerants, but we would understand that some way up that vessel, there's liquid on the bottom, but there's vapor, refrigerant vapor on the top. So imagine that vessel, halfway full of liquid, but it has vapor pressure on top. So one of the things is, what would happen, I've drawn in a valve on the bottom here. If I were to open that valve, what would happen? So obviously the liquid would come pouring out of that valve into the room. The pressure on top is pushing that liquid out. So that's the way that we're going to get liquid refrigerant out of machines, whether it be a chiller, whether it be a half-ton cylinder, whatever it might be. But we're depending on vapor pressure from that refrigerant pushing that liquid out. So that's fundamental in the idea that we may get a chiller that has a liquid level, and we're depending on that pressure to push that liquid refrigerant out. So that's kind of fundamental. But somebody says, well, what kind of pressure is on top of that liquid that's pushing it out? So here's a little diagram, and you can get a professional pressure and temperature chart to say, imagine 134 refrigerant at 40 degrees, the pressure of 134 here would be about 40 psi. So this sample that I've got here, if it's 70 degrees, if that liquid is 70 degrees, the pressure on top of that liquid pushing it out of that cylinder is about 70 pounds of pressure. So that's plenty for us to empty that vessel, whether that vessel represents a chiller or just we're going to move refrigerant out of a cylinder. But in comparison, one thing to think about, let's change that refrigerant over to R410. And if you look at R410 at 20 degrees, the pressure is about 78 psi. If you went to even 40 degrees with 410, you're about 120 pounds pressure. So that gauge reading here on that vessel, if it had 410 in it, would be much higher.